course material, but I would like to start out by talking about assignment number 3. Okay, we talked about McCarthyism, and we talked about how the Red Scare kind of overtook the United States during this time. And the first question that I ask in assignment number 3 is relating the ideas of McCarthyism and what the government in the United States did during this time with the early stages of totalitarianism that we've talked about in class. Okay. So don't worry about that. So really, all I want you to make the connection is I want you to think about, go back to the scoop, right? We talked about the scoop. I want you to go back to those notes and try to connect with how did McCarthy specifically, right? Joseph McCarthy, that kind of started this time of paranoia and fear and, you know, where everybody's scared about their neighbors being a communist and about the government coming to get them. How does this stage in US history relate to some of the early stages of totalitarianism that we talked about, right? What similarities do we see? Okay. And what are some tactics that Joseph McCarthy is taking, okay, that might be similar to the one that a totalitarian leader might take, okay, during their early rise to power, okay? And I really want you to try and use specific examples from your notes from totalitarianism and try connect it to the legislative actions, meaning legal actions that the government has taken during this time to try and prevent communism from happening. Okay. Yes, communism was there, but was the level of fear and government involvement in individuals' lives, was that necessary? Okay. So hopefully that kind of gets your ball rolling in the right direction. For those of you who here has actually done assignment number 3 already, or at least that question. Does silence mean no one's done it yet?
Done what? Assignment 3?
Assignment 3 on question 1. We're talking about question 1 and assignment 3. So have you finished that yet, Mason?
Yes.
I haven't. I have.
Me and Anson have.
Okay, so you and Anson have. Do you want to just briefly talk about what are some of the connections that you've made between the concept of totalitarianism and the period of McCarthyism in the United States?
Sure, that kind of. Let me just bring it up here.
Sure, take your time.
They prohibited communism. They prohibited the opposition party or something.
You speak, man.
Yeah, too far.
Anson will say something.
The U.S. government prohibited the communism party. Like they wouldn't allow anyone to support it or be a part of it.
Yeah. So like in totalitarianism, it talks about how they want a singular political party. While in the United States, there were still the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but saying that we will not allow the Communist Party to rise in this country is limiting the political opposition that is possible in the country. So yeah, I think that is a very clear step towards totalitarianism that we see during this time period. What else? Hey, Jack. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, it's good.
Okay. So I also want you to frame this question, okay? I really want you to think about it in not necessarily just the fear aspect, but how is the government gaining more power in the lives of individuals? Okay. How is that concept of due process, especially in those trials that people talk about, right? They talked about the trial of the Hollywood 10. Essentially, they were accused of being communists and they refused to speak out because they were saying that, no, we actually have the right to hold whatever political belief we have without you grilling us or prosecuting us about it. Okay. So the fact that this Hollywood 10 were not necessarily put in jail, but they were socially ostracized or socially put to the side and their careers essentially ended. So how is that control of individuals' belief in which political party limited during this time period? And what is that like? How is that connected to the idea of totalitarianism? Okay, so hopefully those questions can help you think on the right track for this question. And let's talk about the second question. Hopefully this will help as well. The second question was talking about why was it that it was during this time that there was so much fear of essentially espionage or spies infiltrating the government? Okay, why was it that during this time people were so afraid of spies? Okay, I mean, previous in World War II and World War I, there were fears about spies, but not to this degree. In fact, the conflict wasn't this ideological information infiltration based conflict. It was literally just physical fighting. But what was it different about the Cold War where people were so afraid of the information getting out, or essentially spies affecting the thoughts and ideas of the US citizens? Okay, so really this comes down to this. All of these questions really stack, so you really have to understand all the concepts that was covered the day before, right, in order to understand the concepts of the day today. Okay, so we talked about the concept of limited war versus total war. Okay, we talked about how some of you guys made connections between limited war, meaning it is limited resource put into the war, meaning the nuclear bomb is not a resource being used in this war, right? Because there were discussions about dropping the atomic bomb on Korea. But the idea really comes from the fact that this is an ideological war. People are afraid of the idea of the atomic bomb or the atomic age or the atomic war initiating. So people are choosing to have this ideological war where espionage and spies and the ideas or conflict is happening via information rather than actual physical conflicts and bombs and bullets. It's because everyone on both sides are deathly afraid of the bomb being dropped. Okay, and really that's the connection that you need to make for question number 2. For those of you who did get assignment number 3 finished, what were some of your responses? Jack, were you able to get assignment number 3 finished?
No.
Not yet? Okay. Mason or Anson, what do you guys think? What do you guys have? You guys still with me?
For question 3, sorry?
Assignment 3, question 2.
I haven't finished mine yet. This is you.
So you want me to say what I did for question 2?
Yeah.
Basically, I just said, do you want me just to read out the whole statement?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, there was an ongoing danger of spies because of cases like Alger Hiss, who was accused of spying for the Soviet Union. After the case of Alger Hiss, the U.S. government was on a hunt to find more people who were in danger to the security of the United States. Months later, they find more spies that had plans to give U.S. bomb secrets to the Soviet Union. Yes, I think the actions of the U.S. government were legitimate because they were protecting not only their information for secret weapons, but the security of their citizens and country. That's what I put.
Perfect. Now, you've done a great job outlining the events that the documentary covers about kind of surrounding the ideas of spies. But let's, you know what, honestly, based on the question that I've given you, honestly, I think that's a really good answer. Okay. I would like to see a little bit more of a larger connection to the larger ideological conflict of the Cold War, meaning how is this fight of information, okay, how is that a symptom of Cold War specifically, right? But honestly, I think you outlining the specific events that is causing the growing danger of spies, okay, during this time period is awesome. So for number 3, I won't go into this one too much because honestly, I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. So we're talking about in number 3, the quote by Jean-Paul Sartre saying, "You're afraid of the shadow of your own bomb," essentially. Okay. Your country is sick with fear. You're afraid of the shadow of your own bomb. What do you think that this man is talking about? Okay. This is mostly going to be your own interpretation of it. There's a clear meaning in there, but I'd be happy to see you connect those ideas kind of covered previously in this assignment, okay, and interpret it as your own. As long as you give me a pretty good interpretation of, I believe that this statement is talking about this because of these reasons, then we're good to go. Okay. Now, this is number 4 is the one that I feel like a lot of people are going to struggle with. So I'd like to do a bit of a very quick review. Let me just pull this up here. Let's see. Okay. Who remembers this good looking man? Okay. So John Stuart Mill. I guess John Stuart Mill. Come on. So really all I'm trying to get you to do for this last question is trying to get you to compare the philosophies of essentially the actions that have taken place, right? All the fear, all the increase in government control in the name of protecting liberalism, right? It's like this weird twisted logic that's happening in the United States during McCarthyism, where people are saying we need to protect liberalism from communism, okay? But what they're also saying is in order for us to protect liberalism from communism, we need to increase government involvement in the country, okay? But what does liberalism stand for if not making sure that there is less government involvement in the country? So there's this weird contradictory idea that's happening where people are saying we want to make sure liberalism, the idea where the government stays out of the economy, stays out of individual people's lives, we need to protect that, but we need to do that by having more government involvement in the economy and by having more involvement in people's lives. Okay. So this is the twisted thing that's happening. And this is the thing that I'm trying to get you to form an opinion on. Okay. Because really, anytime we're talking about these guys, we're talking about philosophical ideas. And sometimes opinion plays more into it than actual straight facts. So I need you to try and understand if the practices of McCarthyism, the period that people are accusing one another, people are afraid of one another, and people are really holding on to this idea of liberalism, okay, and trying to protect it, if that practice is true to what John Stuart Mill and John Locke is talking about, okay? So what I want you to do, these slides you should have available to you through Google Classroom. And what I really want you to do is read through these slides again, okay? Re-understand the foundational concepts of classical liberalism as John Stuart Mill and John Locke put it out to be. And I want you to tell me if, in your own opinion, if the acts of protecting liberalism or capitalism from communism during the time of McCarthyism is what John Stuart Mill and John Locke would have agreed to. Would they have said, yes, we are willing to give up our liberties temporarily in order to protect the larger concept of liberalism in this world? Okay. So how do things like, okay, utilitarianism play in? Okay. If John Stuart Mill believed that the morality of the action is based on the end results, okay, if utilitarianism is the thing that's guiding our decision here, oh, my battery's running low. If utilitarianism is the thing that's guiding our actions, then what you need to ask yourself is, during this time of Red Scare or McCarthyism, did the end result justify the means? Did the protection of liberalism by all means necessary, the end result of that, was that good? Did it create more harm or did it create more happiness in the world? Was it worth the sacrifices? Okay. Think about the harm principle, okay? You're free to do whatever you want as long as you're not harming others. So did these trials of the Hollywood 10 harm others? What happens if you need to harm those 10 people in order to protect the entirety of the nation? Okay, so you need to figure out if harming those 10 people's lives were worth the protection, or if harming those 10 people's lives were productive at all. Okay, and really the concept of eccentricity here, right? This is an important one because you should, in a classical liberal society, technically, you should be free to have the opinion that communism is awesome. However, in this system of McCarthyism, it is saying that communism is not allowed. Everyone needs to be the same and no one can be eccentric or different in their beliefs. Okay. And tyranny of the majority. Arguably, what's happening here with McCarthyism is by definition the tyranny of majority. Okay. The people that refuse to speak up in these trials and saying, I have the right to believe in communism and you do not have the right to grill me about it because there's more of you, is essentially talking about the tyranny of the majority. These are all things that we've talked about in second unit, okay? That very much applies to everything that we're talking about with this Red Scare and McCarthyism, okay? So you don't need to like spend hours reteaching yourself what John Stuart Mill and John Locke talked about, but just take a quick read through. It's going to jog your memory enough that you should be able to get one or two good lines put down for question number 4 for assignment 3. Does that make sense, or is that a lot of information?
That makes sense. Thank you.
It's good. Yeah.
It's good. Okay. So, hey, Wyatt, you're a bit late.
Hi. Yeah, I was trying to get home. What?
Everything okay at the farm?
Yep.
Okay. So you missed the first half. I gave some information on assignment 3. So you can always go back and rewatch it. I think it was pretty clear how I put everything. But we're going to just start talking about today's assignment, the thing that I posted today. Okay. So we'll start there. Hopefully my laptop doesn't die. If it does, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. So you probably haven't seen today's video. I literally just posted it 20 minutes ago. But essentially, the video is going to be talking about a few different things. It's going to be talking about the concept known as the third party or the non-aligned movement. Okay, so that's topic number 1. And I really want you to understand, at the very start of this unit, I talked about how the Cold War only has 2 main sides and that you need to understand it as a narrative. Okay. Now, while I did say that, it'll help, thinking of it that way will help you understand the larger concept of the Cold War. But really, when we want to study it closely, we do need to understand that there's more nuance and more detail that we need to actually understand. So the third or the non-aligned movement or the third party of the Cold War is essentially the millions and millions of people. In fact, I think the documentary says that 2/3 of the population of Earth at this point in civilized Earth actually identified with the non-aligned movement, meaning that these were people that didn't believe that the Soviet communism was the right way. They also didn't believe that the US capitalism was the right way. So there was this third party, okay, essentially that said, I don't think either of those sides have the right answer here. We're going to do our own thing. Okay. So essentially, I'm just asking you, who was involved in this third party? Okay. And why was it important for us to know this? Okay. We need to understand this because, yes, the 2 sides that we're currently talking about, the United States, the capitalists, and the USSR, the communists, okay, they really dominate the narrative or the story of what Cold War was. But at the end of the day, majority of society was actually in this non-aligned, I don't want to be in either side situation. Okay. And they kind of meet together in this conference, like how the the two sides met during the Potsdam Conference. Okay, this third party or the non-aligned movement come together in this conference called the Bandung Conference, and they talk about what they want to see happen in the world. Okay, and unfortunately, and I'm going to get you guys to explore this on your own. Okay, through the documentary, it makes it pretty clear. But I want you guys to think about how the United States and the USSR, but mostly the United States, how do they respond to this idea of the third party? The groups of people that are not taking sides. How do the US specifically see these people that are refusing to take the side of capitalism? Is it a positive reaction or is it a negative reaction? Okay. And what are the consequences of that? Okay. Think about what you would do, say, if you're having a very large argument with some guy that you see out in the park or something. Okay. And all these people that you thought were your friends, okay, and you're like asking for help, is like, hey, help me out, back me up here. And your friends are saying, actually, we don't really want to take a side. Actually, I think we don't want to get involved with this stranger that you're fighting with the park, but also we don't want to take your side either right now. I think you guys are both kind of being silly about this. So what happens when US sees that from their perceived friends? And what is the US's reaction? Okay. Another thing that I want to talk about is the idea. I want to build on this idea of the containment policy, right? We talked about containment policy with, I believe, assignment 1, right? Talked about how the US and the Great Britain's goal was to try and contain communism from spreading. Okay. And President Dwight D. Eisenhower at this point introduces another concept that adds to it, and he calls it the domino effect. And essentially what he is saying is if one country falls to communism, okay, then a bunch of other countries around it will follow. He's saying that if we let one country fall to communism, then it's like a domino. The one domino gets knocked over, meaning falls into communism, then it's just going to knock over the next one, and the next one. So he sees the falling of one nation to communism as the entire continent falling into communism. And I think with the question, I'm asking you to make a judgment on this. Okay, I know this is a very complex international foreign policy that we're trying to study, but you should have enough information from the documentary that you should be able to say, I think that the containment policy and the domino effect was a true and moral attempt at trying to do what Dwight D. Eisenhower believed was the best for the country. Or was the idea of saying, well, we can't lose any war that we go into? Is there some sort of weird ulterior motive? Meaning, does he actually have a secondary reason for going into all of these conflicts and trying to take over all this land for capitalism? Was there other reasons or other benefits to maybe Dwight D. Eisenhower going in and saying, no, we can't lose this land in the Middle East that may or may not have a lot of oil and strategic trade ports. We can't lose that to communism, because if one thing falls to communism, as we all know, everything falls to communism. So that's why we need to go into war. Everybody with me? All right, this is the domino effect. Okay, so I want you to decide. I know I'm kind of leading you towards the answer right now, but I want to really have you decide here. Any questions about that? Going once? Twice? Okay, let's move on. And the last thing I'm talking about is really this chart here. Let's go back to this chart. So I don't know if you guys all watched the video kind of explaining this chart, okay? I kind of introduced it at a point where a lot of you guys were away, okay? So this chart, you can think of it as this squiggly line, okay, is the narrative story of the Cold War, okay? This is the story of Cold War, okay? And just like a chart in math, okay, you have the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, the x-axis talks about the passage of time. As we move towards the right here on this line, right? We're just talking about time passing. Okay, and the y-axis, the vertical line here, is just talking about the increase in tension or the decrease in tension between the Cold War, in the Cold War, so between the USSR and the United States. So as time passes from this point, tension is rising, and then once we get to this point, we actually see a decrease in tension, and this time is known as détente. Okay, that is a French word for the release. I think I don't speak French. Okay, but I'm pretty sure that's what it means. It means to release, releasing of the conflict. Okay, and one of the main reasons that this happens is especially in the United States, that this détente or the releasing or the relaxing happens is what is known as the Vietnam syndrome. Okay, and really everything is connected. Everything that we're talking about is related to one another, and this really comes from Dwight Eisenhower's push for we cannot let a single nation fall to communism or all of them will fall. Okay. And more so than other countries, the Vietnam War was a war of pride for the United States. Okay. So right after World War World War II, okay, essentially the French, who had typically been in control of the Vietnamese region, or the French Indochina, as it was called back then, okay, it got taken over by Japan. And as soon as World War II was over, the French went into French Indochina and tried to take it back, okay? They said, this has been ours. Japan stole it from us. We want it back. And this is the point where a leader called Ho Chi Minh rises. He is a communist leader in Vietnam who is actually unrelated, okay, to the rise of the Soviet communism. He just believes in communism and decides to rise up and run a country that way. Okay, and this is one of the first instances of what is traditionally known as a colonial country or colonized country, meaning a weaker country, beating a European country. Okay, beating a European country in an all-out war like this. Okay, the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, okay, is one of the biggest losses that the French go through, especially because the Vietnamese at this time were understaffed. They had less equipment, but somehow they horribly lose this war. Okay. So the U.S. kind of have something to prove as they go into a fight with the same people, the same communist Vietnamese people. They have something to prove, okay? And they also essentially lose. And this is what causes the concept known as the Vietnam syndrome. People at this point are so sick of going into battles because the U.S. government is saying that we can't lose this one, okay? And people are just saying, you know what? We're so tired of all these fights. We don't want to do this anymore. We don't see the point in it. Okay. So people have kind of lost sight of that initial fear that we saw in McCarthyism of if we let this go, then there's going to be a nuclear war. There's been so much fighting since McCarthyism that people are saying, well, we've had this much conflict. No one is going to drop the bomb. We understand that if one of us drops the bomb, then we all die. No one is dumb enough to do that. Okay, so we just want to stop the fighting. We're sick of it. So let's just all relax. And this is the period known as the détente. Okay, and really, let me just read through the question again, just so I can give you. So essentially the question asks, what was the Vietnam syndrome and how was it connected to the concept of détente? Okay, I've already given you the answer. Okay, and the last thing that I really want you to try and connect is I want you to think about the difference in how the countries are governed at this point between the US and the USSR. Because the last part of the question, oh, my phone just died, or my computer just died. Okay, so the last part of the question that I'm asking you for number 3 is, why do you think that the people of US's opinion on wars affected national policies? Meaning, why did people having the Vietnam syndrome at this point affect how the US government pulled out of conflicts during this time, while the USSR, who lived through the same types of conflicts during the same period in time, why did they not slow down and why did they not relax? Because while the US relaxes, the USSR is kind of saying, yes, yes, we'll be friends, but they're still ramping up military production. They're still ramping up the production of nuclear warfare or warheads. Okay. So what is the difference between the government of the United States, where the people's opinions change national policies, while in the USSR, people, whether they're tired of conflict or not, it really does not play into the decision-making of the Kremlin, or essentially the White House equivalent of the USSR. Okay. So, so the concepts I've talked about are very clearly outlined in this documentary. And I hope that me kind of laying out the foundation and telling you about what all these concepts are will kind of help better arm you into going into the video. The video is actually quite short. It's like less than 10 minutes. Okay, but it's quite dense. So if you are having a hard time understanding things, I highly recommend just taking the 20 minutes to watch it twice, because the second time around, you'll understand it a lot more. And I also recommend reading through the question before you jump into the documentary so that you know what you're already looking for, so that you're not watching the video just kind of not knowing what to look for and then going to the question and being like, I vaguely remember what they said. But you're still able to, you can actively search for the answers while you watch it the first time through. I do really want to clarify something. I know that there are certain groups of students who are working together on all these assignments, and I think that is perfectly fine. But what I need you to do is, I'm happy for you guys to be watching the videos together, reading through the questions together, and talking about the concepts. But when it comes time to actually type out your responses, I need you guys to do that separately, okay? Because at the end of the day, I really have no way to know if you guys are just, if you guys are actually learning the things that I need you to learn, if I see very similar responses coming in, okay? I need things in your own words, not necessarily that these are all original ideas that only you could have had. Because really, I'm trying to get you to say certain things. So you guys are going to have similar answers, but when it comes time to actually typing it out, I need the way in which you type these things out to be so different that I have no doubt in my mind that there was zero plagiarism happening. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. Again, if you weren't here, please read through the rubric that I posted. There's a series of questions to ask yourself as you answer the assignment questions, to be like, okay, did I answer all of the aspects of the question? Is the question that is relevant to what we're talking about? So hopefully that'll make sure that you have higher grades going into this assignments. Okay. Any questions?
No, all good. Thank you.
Okay. If you don't have questions, I'll let you all go. If you do have any questions, or if you want to chat with me about something privately, I should probably end this recording if you guys want to chat with me privately about something. So I'm stopping the recording now. Oh, not yet.